guys and girls, welcome to today's video where we are building a 3-meter pondless waterfall out of our signature aqua blues. Today's video is more on rock placement and how to naturalise your water feature as best as possible. So first things first, obviously we need to mark out our shelves and dig in our basin, obviously where the water is going to be stored. Obviously we can see we already have a berm, that's obviously because we've been doing other projects on site, so where we've been building patios and stuff like that, which you would have seen in other videos, we already have our berm, so it's only the soil. We've got to find a new place for where the basin is, and yeah, let's start digging that. When building a waterfall, we like to mark out where our spillways are going to be to start off with, and obviously we have to take in proportion the size of the berm to make it look as much natural. So we'll come in, we'll look at the sitting and the patio areas and where the views are from the house, and we'll focus on that because you want to be able to see them from all your garden and enjoy it wherever you are in your garden. So we'll come in here, we'll just look by our eye where we think it will be good, and then we'll mark it up just using line marker. So yeah, we're going to mark it up now. Once the reservoir has been dug for where your aqua blocks want to go, the second, and to be honest one of the most important things to consider, is where your pump vault will go. And you need to excavate this about 6 inches lower, so they'll have a foot on them, and you want to make sure that will go under the aqua blocks in the reservoir. And you want to make sure it's a place of ease so you can get to it, so if there is ever any maintenance, or you can get to the pump and just take it out of ease. So we're going to set it over this sort of side, so it's closer to the patio, it's near the electric, so all the maintenance is really in one section. So yeah, let's take it out of the box now and put it in place to mark it up. Alright, now we've got this marked in the hole, I just want to quickly just explain a bit more on the foot here. As I say, your pump vault, you want to make sure your aqua blocks sit above this when they're, so yeah, we'll excavate this down about 6 inches just so this is lower and your lowest point, so the water will always go to the lowest point in the basin. So yeah, let's get this out of the way and start digging this. Now all built up, and the reason why we use aqua blocks is just the consistency of water they have, and these are actually the small ones, so they do have a size bigger than this, but these ones hold 67 litres of water, and when you have 5 of them, that's quite a lot. So 67 litres of water also goes into about 14 gallons of water. So yeah, the reason we use them, they hold so much more water than, as I said earlier on in the video, your little off-the-shelf garden centre water feature. So let's go put these in the hole. The sun is slowly going down, but I just want to quickly talk to you before the sun does set about rock placement. And the first bit I want to talk to you about and why it's so important is, here is our spillway. Obviously we've got a pack around and obviously we'll all foam it in, but this is our spillway and these are our framing rocks, and we want to make sure when these are really, to be honest, the more important ones necessarily to the spillway, because it doesn't really matter which rock you pick, these ones are the important ones, and you want to make sure they're in front of the spillway. So in nature it carves its way. If you've ever been to like a national park or something like that, you'll notice the rocks, the water has always carved its way through, so they always stick further past the actual spillway. The next feature about is stacking rocks, and that is a no-go for building waterfalls or ponds. If James just pans the camera down here, we've stacked this rock behind, and if we've noticed, we've hid the bottom because obviously you don't want to see, it's nature again, it's recreating nature. If I just quickly take this one up just as an example and put it on, say like this rock here, because it just doesn't look natural whatsoever. And you have to remember when building a water feature that these are big rocks and the water has carved carved its way through. So this, if this small rock was on top of a bigger rock, it would have been washed away. So that's why we stack it behind and hide the bottom so it looks all natural and like the water carves through it. We've got one of our hot tips for sort of edging a waterfall here. You can see here is we've got obviously the overlay. This is the waterproof bag, the liner. And one thing is, mate, is you have like a massive roll of stuff. It's really, really hard to hide. So actually, the overlay, if you just cut it just, so you imagine this is the top of the rock here, just at sort of the top of the rock, and then when this comes up and in, that can then pinch over and fold over, and this will be cut back to sort of about 150 mil, 6 inches, just giving you a little bit to play with. You know, if there's a low edge in the future stuff, you've got plenty of lines to play with, and that can just fold back down on itself. And then with the underlay, which is here, coming up, just protecting it from the soil here. It's now time to foam the falls, and then we can get the feature running to see where the water's running and if it's escaping around any of the edges. This isn't going to be waterproof, but it is going to guide the water where we want it to be. So it's really simple. You can just run a little bead, just like that, and come in here, just like that, let that set, and we're going to push it down ever so slightly. Bigger lows like that, what we'll do is we can sort of plug it there, we'll fill it with a bit of gravel, and then we'll run over the top and maybe even just squash a bit of underlay on there. Just to say again, we're directing the water with this, and we'll probably do up the edges here and everything, so the water is forced over this fantastic rock here, and from down there we have a fantastic waterfall. So our basin, you probably can't see that, our basin is nearly full, and Lee's just buttoning up the plumbing at the top here. Another really awesome tip is we're going to run this, and we've foamed up the waterfalls, but we've left the edges, and the reason we've left the edges there is because, you know, if you do it all and you actually cut your liner and then you go, oh crumbs, it's leaking somewhere, and you've got no spare liner to bring up. So what we'll do is we actually button up the edges when the water's running, so we know exactly where the water height's going to be in each one. Obviously it changes, and that means we cannot physically make a mistake. You know, we always overorder on liner, so we've got plenty of space to run through. And you see, look at all this here. So, you know, if water starts trickling in somewhere here, we can bring this up. We can adjust with some of the wing walls that are going to go in afterwards. Bring the soil in, and then it will look completely natural. But top tip, run it whilst the edges are loose. So this is really quickly our first test run. So we have got quite a big leak, so we actually didn't foam just in there on that side of the waterfall where it cuts under the rock, so our mistake on that front. So that will have a lot more water coming over it, and in turn it pushes it, and we've got just a little leak in here. Apart from that, I think it's pretty tidy. So what we'll do is we can shut it down and sort it out. So what we're doing here is actually we're just filling in the pebbles, sort of in the actual basins and stuff, and there's two sort of top tips that I can sort of recommend. Firstly is if you imagine sort of like a real waterfall, as it pours off, it's going to be deeper here, it's going to be turbulent, it's going to be sort of like that plunge pool that you see in nature, whether it be sort of you know, a couple of feet high or it's like 100 feet high. Second tip is you can see sort of, if you imagine the main flow of rush of water coming through here, it's going to be slightly stiller over here. It might even sort of like circulate a little bit. So actually what we're doing is just creating a little beach there. It just adds more character, adds more depth to sort of the water feature, and it's sort of, when we say sort of what we're trying to recreate, this is what we're looking at. You know, if you imagine you have like a massive arc in a river, it's always going to be eating away at the far side, and it's going to slowly dump sediment on the inner side. That's what we're sort of replicating or trying to sort of mimic, without obviously just dumping a pile of dirt in the water feature. They're just little tips. I mean, we always just say, a little bit harder here in Norfolk, but you know, get out and take a look at some real waterfalls. and be inspired. Here we go, we can now start seeing on the left hand side some wing walls going in. A massive tip, especially if your goal is to try and make it look as natural as possible, is the stones outside of the actual liner, pond or waterfall are actually just as important. I really can't stress it enough actually, because if you just had this line coming down here, first of all the soil fall against the fence in this situation, but you start to get just like a line, and it's quite boring. So when it comes to it, it sort of like morphs into sort of edging, so different edges. So here obviously we've just got the rocks, and then you can have obviously some of the gravel, you might put a little bit of moss in there. Coming up here, so this hole here is going to be a planting pocket. Nothing aquatic, nothing too aquatic I should say, maybe something like a hosta or a geum or something like that, because this isn't going to run all the time and aquatics may dry out, so you go away, but and it's also not going to run at night and things like that. So we've got sort of like plants that like damp conditions, so they'll be able to get their toes wet. We'll fill it up, create a little bag out of some of the spare underlay, and we'll fill up with soil, and yeah, say something like a hosta would go really well in there. And the great thing is if you start planting in here and sort of out on the verge there, it becomes one and you really start to lose the edges, and again that all comes into edging. So what we've got to do is we've got to sort out the basin and then work our way up this side.